Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Neil Armstrong. The quiet pioneer who took humanity's greatest step. Neil Armstrong remains one of the most iconic figures in human history, a man whose single step onto the moon transformed what was once the realm of myth and imagination into tangible reality. Yet behind the global fame was a remarkably humble, private, and deeply dedicated pilot whose lifelong passion for flight paved the way for one of the most extraordinary achievements of the 20th century. Early life in the making of an aviator. Neil Alden Armstrong was born on August 5, 1930, in Wapakoneta, Ohio. Fascinated by airplanes from a young age, Armstrong took his first airplane ride at the age of 6 and instantly developed a lifelong love for aviation. His teenage years were spent building model aircraft, studying aeronautics, and flying. He earned his pilot's license before he had a driver's license. Armstrong studied aerospace engineering at Purdue University, funded through the U.S. Navy's Holloway Plan. During the Korean War, he served as a naval aviator, flying 78 combat missions and surviving several close calls, experiences that sharpened his skill and calmness under pressure. Test pilot to astronaut. After the war, Armstrong joined the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, which later became NASA. As a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base, he flew some of the most experimental aircraft ever built, including the legendary X-15 rocket plane. These flights pushed the limits of speed and altitude, and Armstrong gained a reputation for precision, discipline, and an unshakable demeanor in dangerous situations. In 1962, Armstrong was selected for NASA's second group of astronauts. His engineering background and flying expertise made him one of the most technically skilled astronauts of his generation. Apollo 11, the historic mission on July 16, 1969, Armstrong, along with Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, launched aboard Apollo 11, destined for the moon. 4 days later, on July 20, Armstrong piloted the lunar module Eagle during a tense descent filled with computer alarms and dwindling fuel. He manually guided the spacecraft to a safe landing site, demonstrating extraordinary calmness and precision. At 10:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and spoke the immortal words, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." The moment was broadcast around the world, watched by an estimated 600 million people, the largest television audience in history at that time. Armstrong and Aldrin collected lunar samples, deployed scientific instruments, and spent about 2.5 hours walking on the moon. Their success marked a monumental achievement in human exploration and a defining triumph of the space race. Life after the moon. Despite becoming one of the most famous men on Earth, Armstrong preferred a quiet and private life. He left NASA in 1971 and became a professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Cincinnati, where he taught for nearly a decade. He later served on several commissions, including the investigation of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Armstrong rarely sought attention, and he remained modest about his accomplishments. To him, Apollo 11 was a team effort of 400,000 people, and he saw himself as simply doing his part. Legacy. Neil Armstrong passed away on August 25, 2012. But his legacy endures as a symbol of courage, innovation, and the limitless possibilities of human achievement. His lunar footprint remains undisturbed, frozen in time on the moon's surface, an eternal reminder of humanity's reach beyond Earth. Armstrong's life represents the spirit of exploration, quiet determination, relentless curiosity, and the belief that the impossible can be made possible. A mind built for exploration. One of the defining traits of Neil Armstrong was his exceptional ability to remain calm when everything around him demanded panic. Colleagues often remark that Armstrong had a computer-like mind, quiet, analytical, and capable of assessing life and death situations in seconds. This temperament first became widely known during a near-fatal test flight in 1962, when Armstrong was flying the X-15 at hypersonic speed. A malfunction caused the aircraft to veer off course, sending him far beyond the planned landing area. Most pilots would have lost control or ejected. Armstrong instead guided the plane back, touching down safely with almost no fuel. These moments would later give NASA confidence in his ability to command Apollo 11. Gemini 8, a crisis that proved his leadership before Apollo. Armstrong's most dramatic mission was Gemini 8 in 1966, where he and astronaut David Scott achieved the first docking of two spacecraft in orbit. The success soon turned into crisis when one of the spacecraft's thrusters malfunctioned, causing the craft to spin wildly at almost 1 revolution per second, an extremely dangerous situation that could have caused unconsciousness or structural failure. Armstrong kept his composure, shut down the malfunctioning system, and manually stabilized the spacecraft. NASA later praised his decision-making as exemplary, demonstrating the kind of level-headed judgment essential for deeper space missions. Although the mission had to be aborted, it proved Armstrong's ability to deal with emergencies, another key factor in his later selection as commander of Apollo 11. Why Armstrong was chosen to be the first man on the moon. Many people wonder why Neil Armstrong, and not Buzz Aldrin, became the first to step onto the lunar surface. Several factors played a role. 1. His calm, analytical nature. NASA valued his ability to remain steady under pressure. 2. His engineering expertise. Armstrong was respected as a true engineer pilot, deeply understanding spacecraft systems. 3. Command position. As the mission commander, it was generally expected he would exit first, following NASA's operational traditions. 4. Personality. Armstrong was modest, non-political, and uninterested in glory, traits NASA valued for such a symbolic moment. The decision wasn't about fame but about who best represented the professionalism and quiet heroism NASA wanted to project. Walking on the moon. The human experience. Although Armstrong rarely spoke about his emotions regarding the moon landing, he did once describe the lunar landscape as a magnificent desolation. He noted the silence, the emptiness, and the surreal beauty of standing on another world. While Aldrin later described the experience as spiritual, Armstrong viewed it through the lens of exploration and engineering. The small personal items Armstrong carried included a piece of wood from the Wright brothers' 1903 flyer, symbolizing the journey from the first powered flight to the moon in just 66 years. The pressure of fame. After Apollo 11, Armstrong became a global icon overnight. Politicians, journalists, and millions of admirers wanted to meet the man who walked on the moon. But Armstrong found this life uncomfortable. He once admitted, "I am, and ever will be, a white socks, pocket protector, nerdy engineer." He preferred quiet work over public attention. To avoid the overwhelming spotlight, he resigned from NASA and chose a peaceful life teaching engineering. Even then, he avoided discussing his moon landing experience in detail with students. Many of them were shocked to discover that the quiet professor in their classroom was the first man on the moon. Contributions beyond Apollo. Although Armstrong largely withdrew from public fame, he continued shaping aerospace in several important ways. 1. Engineering professor. He helped educate the next generation of space engineers and pilots. 2. Investigation roles. Armstrong played key roles in the Rogers Commission investigating the 1986 Challenger disaster, using his technical knowledge to push for safety reforms. 3. Advocacy for space exploration. Though soft-spoken, Armstrong supported NASA and emphasized continued human exploration beyond Earth. 4. Symbolic figure. He represented the idea that humanity could achieve the impossible through discipline and imagination. A legacy that transcends history. Neil Armstrong's name has become synonymous with bravery, scientific achievement, and human aspiration. Countless schools, streets, and institutions bear his name. His legacy spans many fields: science, inspiring future generations to pursue engineering and space exploration; culture, becoming a global symbol of human progress; technology, proving that large, complex, multinational goals can be achieved with cooperation and innovation. Perhaps Armstrong's greatest legacy is not just that he walked on the moon, but that he showed humanity what was possible. His journey encouraged millions to dream bigger, push harder, and believe that no frontier is too distant. Neil Armstrong, the man behind the moon, the reserved hero in a loud world. One of the great paradoxes of Neil Armstrong's life is that the man who made the most famous step in human history never showed interest in being famous. Friends often called him extraordinarily normal, a person who avoided drama, valued logic over emotion, and focused on the work rather than the spotlight. He rarely raised his voice, never bragged, and avoided speaking about his achievements unless someone asked directly. Even then, he would often shift the credit to others. Astronaut Gene Cernan once said, "Neil was the kind of person who would rather listen than talk. But when he talked, every word was worth hearing." A family man behind the scenes despite his global status, Armstrong was very private about his personal life. He married Janet Sheeran in 1956, and they had 3 children: Eric, Mark, and Karen. Tragically, their daughter Karen died of a brain tumor in 1962 at the age of 2. Her death affected Armstrong deeply, though he rarely spoke about it. Many biographers believe that his stoic calm, and his preference for focusing on work, were strengthened by this profound loss. During Apollo 11, Janet Armstrong displayed immense strength. When a technical issue occurred during the landing, Mission Control briefly lost contact with the astronauts. Janet heard the headset go silent and quietly asked Flight Director Gene Kranz, "You're a bunch of boys playing with toys. You don't know what you're doing." It showed the human, emotional side of a mission often remembered only for its technology and triumph. The pressure of representing humanity. After returning from the moon, Armstrong and his crewmates embarked on a world tour, visiting dozens of countries. Everywhere he went, Armstrong was greeted like a global ambassador. He met world leaders, walked through parades, and received honors, but he never became comfortable with this new role. Many people expected him to be an eloquent spokesperson for humanity's future. Instead, he remained soft-spoken, introverted, and cautious in his public statements. He often said, "I wasn't chosen to be the first man on the moon because I was special. I was chosen because someone had to be first. And I happened to be in that position." Myths and misunderstandings. The moon landing launched countless myths, including 1. The infamous quote, "One small step for man." Armstrong insisted he did say, "a man," but the "a" was lost in radio transmission. Modern audio analysis supports his claim, though the debate continues. 2. Did he place a secret message or object on the moon? Some rumors say Armstrong left personal items or tributes on the moon, including for his daughter Karen. NASA records confirm he carried a memorial pouch with personal mementos, though he never spoke about it publicly. 3. The idea that he disliked Aldrin. In reality, the two respected each other professionally, though they had very different personalities. Armstrong was private, Aldrin was outgoing. Their differences were exaggerated by media narratives. The moon landing's cultural shockwave, Armstrong's step on the moon, redefined what humanity believed was possible. Within weeks, children around the world announced they wanted to be astronauts. Artists created paintings, poems, songs, and films inspired by Apollo 11. Newspapers declared the event the birth of a new epic. Nations that had been rivals came together in celebration. Even political enemies paused their conflicts briefly to admire the achievement. The landing also transformed America's identity. After years of Cold War anxiety, social upheaval, and the Vietnam War, the moon landing restored a sense of unity and hope. For many, Armstrong's calm presence symbolized a new ideal of heroism: humble, intelligent, team-oriented, and guided by purpose rather than ego. Armstrong's relationship with fame. Despite being one of the most recognized names in history, Armstrong never capitalized on his fame. He refused millions in endorsements and declined to run for political office, even though he likely would have won easily. He once joked, "I don't want to be a mascot for the human race." Instead, he focused on teaching engineering research, public service, aviation safety, supporting new generations of explorers. He lived quietly on a farm in Ohio for many years, flying gliders and spending time with family out of the public eye. His views on humanity's future in space. Armstrong remained a supporter of space exploration until the end of his life. Though he did not seek the spotlight, he made rare public appearances to advocate for NASA funding and long-term exploration goals. He believed humans should return to the moon. Mars was a natural next step. Exploration must be steady, incremental, and responsible. The value of space exploration goes far beyond science. It expands the human spirit. In 2010, Armstrong publicly opposed the cancellation of the Constellation program, which aimed to return astronauts to the moon. He believed abandoning the lunar frontier was a mistake. Final years and lasting influence. Neil Armstrong passed away on August 25, 2012, at age 82. His family released a statement that ended with, "For those who may ask what they can do to honor Neil, honor his example of service, accomplishment, and modesty. And the next time you walk outside on a clear night and see the moon smiling down at you, think of Neil Armstrong and give him a wink." The world embraced the idea. On the night of his death, tens of thousands of people across the globe stepped outside and winked at the moon in tribute. A legacy engraved in human history. Neil Armstrong achieved what countless generations only dreamed of. Yet he remained grounded, humble, and human. His legacy is not just the first footprint on the moon, it is the message behind it. That courage can be quiet, that progress comes from teamwork, that curiosity drives civilization forward, that even ordinary people can do extraordinary things in an age defined by speed and noise. Armstrong reminds us of the power of calm persistence and quiet bravery. His step was not just a leap for mankind, it was a promise of what humanity may one day become. Neil Armstrong. A life measured in quiet acts of bravery, the relentless precision of an engineer's mind. Armstrong's colleagues often said that if you wanted an emotional speech, you should ask someone else, but if you needed something done flawlessly, you called Neil. He thought like an engineer, methodical, cautious, and always prepared for contingencies. Before Apollo 11, he spent hundreds of hours studying lunar landing simulations. Engineers later revealed that Armstrong quietly pointed out tiny calculation errors others had missed, corrections that helped improve the safety of the Eagle lander. He didn't seek credit. He simply handed over his notes and said, "Take a look at page 3. This borderline obsessive attention to detail saved his life multiple times. From the X-15 flights to the lunar module training vehicle crash, where he ejected less than a second before impact. Lunar Module Training Vehicle, the crash that almost ended Apollo 11 on May 6, 1968, Armstrong was practicing lunar landings using the LLTV, a bizarre flying machine with a small cockpit balanced on a spindly metal frame and a jet engine. A fuel leak caused the vehicle to start tumbling sideways. Armstrong kept control for as long as possible before ejecting at barely 200 feet in the air. Parachuting down safely, he landed calmly, dusted off his jumpsuit, and walked away. Minutes later, he was seen in his office, quietly filling out paperwork as if nothing had happened. A NASA colleague asked, "Aren't you supposed to be dead?" Armstrong only replied, "I'm fine. Let's get back to work." This legendary calmness strengthened NASA's confidence that he was the right man to command Apollo 11. The psychological weight of being first, few people truly appreciate the mental burden Armstrong carried. Being the first human to set foot on another world was more than a technical task, it was a moment that would be judged by history. He knew every step would be watched by hundreds of millions. Every word would be recorded. Any mistake could cast a shadow over the mission. Despite this, he never showed anxiety to his crewmates. Michael Collins later said, "Neil was rock solid. If he felt pressure, he never showed it." Armstrong's philosophy was simple: do the job. Do it well. Let history interpret it. Inside Mission Control. The 13 agonizing minutes during the Eagle's descent, several things went wrong. The onboard computer repeated error codes, 1201, 1202. The autopilot nearly steered the lander into a crater. Fuel levels dropped dangerously low. During this chaos, Armstrong's heart rate climbed, but only to 150 beats per minute. Doctors expected it to hit 200 plus. He took manual control, scanning for a safe landing site. The landing occurred with just 16 seconds of usable fuel left. After touchdown, instead of celebrating, Armstrong began running through post-landing procedures. Buzz Aldrin had to remind him to pause and enjoy the moment. "Hey, Neil, isn't it something?" Armstrong smiled, but even then, he returned to the checklist. In the Shadow of the Moon. Armstrong's private reflections. Armstrong rarely talked about emotions, but in one rare interview, he said something profound about standing on the moon. "You realize how small and fragile the Earth is. It's a brilliant oasis in the vastness of space. We must take care of it." This quiet environmental message influenced many scientists and activists. Though not political, Armstrong understood something essential: humanity's home is unique and vulnerable. Why he stepped back from the public eye after Apollo 11, the world wanted Armstrong to become a symbol, a celebrity, a spokesperson, a political figure. But he refused. He turned down millions in endorsements. He refused all requests to run for office. He ignored Hollywood offers. He declined interviews unless they had scientific merit. He once said, "The moon was my job, not my life." Armstrong's retreat was not shyness, it was protection. He wanted to preserve the purity of Apollo, uncorrupted by fame, money, or politics. A mentor to the quiet ones, Armstrong became beloved among introverted engineers and pilots. He gave hope to young people who were quiet, bookish, or unsure if they had leadership qualities. He proved that leadership doesn't always require charisma. Calmness can be more powerful than loud confidence. Precision and discipline can shape history. Many engineers later said they followed their careers because of Armstrong, not the spectacle, but the example. The man who never lost his curiosity even in his final years. Armstrong stayed intellectually active. He studied advances in aeronautics, consulted for aerospace companies, and supported young innovators. When asked what still fascinated him, he replied, "The unknown. That's where we must go." He believed humanity's destiny lay in returning to the moon, building lunar habitats, exploring Mars, developing advanced spacecraft, expanding knowledge across the solar system. His dream wasn't glory, it was progress. Armstrong's final lesson at his core. Neil Armstrong taught the world something simple yet profound. True greatness doesn't shout. It whispers. Not through speeches, but through actions. Not through fame, but through contributions. Not through ego, but through purpose. He walked on the moon, but he lived on Earth with humility. He became a legend, but remained a man. He changed history, yet never claimed to own it. Neil Armstrong. Beyond the first step, the quiet rebel against complacency. Despite his calm demeanor, Armstrong had a streak of quiet rebellion. He questioned assumptions, challenged plans when necessary, and was never satisfied with good enough. During Apollo 11 simulations, Armstrong noticed that the computer's pre-programmed landing sequence might direct the Eagle into a crater with boulders. While many astronauts might have followed protocol blindly, Armstrong quietly lobbied for the ability to take manual control during the final descent. That decision likely saved the mission, and humanity's first lunar footprint. Rare stories from colleagues. The coffee spill incident. Armstrong once spilled coffee on a console during a simulation at NASA. Instead of panicking, he calmly unplugged the system, cleaned the spill, and resumed without a word. Observers remarked it was classic Neil. He handled chaos with quiet efficiency. The X-15 close call. Many know he ejected from the lunar landing training vehicle, but fewer know that the ejection sequence was only 1.5 seconds from failure. His smooth execution, completely instinctive, showcased the rare combination of reflex and calculation that defined his career. The glider obsession. Even after retirement, Armstrong loved flying gliders. It wasn't about thrill, it was about pure flight. Friends said he would spend hours silently soaring, studying aerodynamics firsthand, appreciating the subtle relationship between control surfaces and air currents. Cultural reverberations of the moon landing. Armstrong's small step had ripple effects beyond science and politics. Art and literature. Writers and artists used the moon landing as a metaphor for human aspiration, exploration, and the fragile beauty of life. Poems, novels, and paintings immortalized his figure on the lunar surface. Technology inspiration. Engineers, programmers, and inventors cite Armstrong's calm problem-solving under pressure as inspiration for innovation in fields from aerospace to computing. Global unity moment. The landing temporarily transcended geopolitical boundaries. Even countries in political opposition paused to celebrate human achievement, highlighting how exploration could unite humanity. Armstrong's philosophy on risk and exploration. Armstrong often said that exploration carried inherent risks, but calculated risks are necessary for progress. His approach combined preparation, mastery of every variable possible, calm execution, avoiding panic, assessing in real-time, team trust, believing in the thousands of engineers, scientists, and pilots supporting him, purpose over ego. Focusing on the mission, not personal fame. He believed that these principles applied not only in spaceflight but to life itself. Innovation, courage, and growth demand measured bravery. Life after NASA. After leaving NASA in 1971,
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.